The magic of year's end. At the far end of a quiet snow-blanketed village, the world seemed to shimmer in silver and white. The year was coming to a close, and the villagers were caught up in the season's bustling preparations. Every house had its windows glowing warmly against the cold night, and the scent of baked bread, spiced cider, and freshly cut pine trees wafted through the crisp winter air. The streets were alive with activity. Children building snowmen, merchants selling colorful candles, and families decorating their doorways with evergreen garlands tied with red ribbons. Yet, at the edge of the village, there was one place that remained quiet: the old clockmaker's shop. Its owner, Mr. Linton, was a man of great talent but had grown frail with age. For over 50 years, he had been the heart of the village's New Year's Eve celebration. Every December, he would craft a magnificent clock to mark the year's end, a timepiece so magical that it would not only count down to midnight, but also set off a grand display of fireworks that lit up the starry sky. This year, however, things were different. Inside his cozy workshop, surrounded by shelves of ticking clocks and the soft glow of an oil lamp, Mr. Linton sat hunched over his tools. His hands, once steady and nimble, now trembled with every movement. His eyes, once sharp, strained to see the tiny gears and springs he worked on. "I don't think I can finish it this year," he murmured to himself, placing his tools down with a heavy sigh. "Not like this." The weight of his words filled the room. For the first time in decades, the village might welcome the new year without his magical clock. That evening, as the snow fell softly outside, there came a faint knock at the door. Mr. Linton looked up, startled. It was late, and he wasn't expecting anyone. Rising from his chair, he shuffled to the door and opened it to find a young girl standing in the snow. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old, wrapped in a thick coat and scarf, her cheeks pink from the cold. "Good evening, Mr. Linton," the girl said, her voice gentle but bright. "My name is Clara. I heard you might need a little help." Mr. Linton frowned in confusion. "Help? From a child?" Clara smiled and held up a small jar that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. Inside, a swirl of golden light danced like fireflies, casting a warm, comforting glow on her face. "Not just any help," she said. "A little magic." The old clockmaker blinked in astonishment. "Magic? What sort of magic is this?" "The kind that finds its way to those who need it most," Clara replied simply. Without waiting for an answer, she stepped inside, her boots leaving tiny wet prints on the wooden floor. Together, Clara and Mr. Linton set to work. Though he was skeptical at first, he couldn't deny the spark of hope her presence brought. The golden light from her jar seemed to infuse the air with warmth, making his tired hands steadier and his mind sharper. The intricate gears and springs, which had seemed impossible just hours ago, now came together with ease. As they worked, Clara hummed a tune soft and lilting, like the chiming of distant bells. The sound filled the workshop, blending with the ticking of clocks and the crackling of the fireplace. "What is that song you're humming?" Mr. Linton asked, pausing for a moment. "It's an old melody my mother used to sing," Clara said, her eyes twinkling. "She always said it was a song of hope." Mr. Linton nodded, feeling a warmth he hadn't known in years. "It's beautiful," he said softly. By the time the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, the clock was finished. It was a masterpiece, a towering creation adorned with carvings of the 4 seasons, tiny golden stars that spun on its face, and delicate hands that glided gracefully over the hours. Clara stepped back to admire their work. "It's perfect," she said. "The village will love it." Mr. Linton smiled, tears glistening in his eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you, Clara." That night, the entire village gathered in the square for the year-end celebration. The clock stood proudly in the center, its golden stars catching the light of the lanterns that lined the square. As the final minutes of the year ticked away, the villagers held their breath in anticipation. 10:08. The clock's chimes rang out, clear and melodious, and when it struck midnight, the golden stars burst into the sky, transforming into a dazzling display of fireworks. The crowd erupted into cheers, their faces lit with wonder and joy. As the villagers celebrated, Mr. Linton looked around for Clara, but she was nowhere to be found. He asked those around him if they had seen a young girl, but no one had.